It is time, my Revenger brothers and sisters. He has risen 3 times. It's time for Raging Rapt to come back. With the new erratas, Raging Rapt and the original Raging form have gotten the boost with the Crest. Essentially, you're able to superior strike regardless if your opponent's at grade 2 or less still, but also generating 2 force markers right off the back. Secondly, Raging Rapt's cost has been added an option to just retire 3 Revengers, which is significantly easier than its original cost. The benefit of Raging Rapt is that you're able to restride multiple times in a single turn for 3 Vanguard attacks consistently, and you could even extend to a 4th Vanguard attack. There's other phenomenal cards such as like Mana and Dark Blast that are able to call additional Revengers to be able to retire continually throughout that turn. And it also has access to grade 1s that help with the consistency with the deck setup as well. Furthermore, you still have access to generic Shadow Paladin support. Cards like Chainranker and Morfessa are really solid. Chainranker is able to take advantage of any grade 3 hearts that you have for this deck and scale them up to a stride level. Morfessa, of course, is, plus crit, demanding 2 cards to guard with, and with a power of 15k to the front row. You also have additional strikes such as the Restanders such as Crow and also Spectral Blast for Diablo, and phenomenal G-Guard in the sense that it can recycle but also become a perfect guard as well. Real quickly, I wanted to do a shout out to My Metal Cards. They actually gave me some of these awesome metal energy counters that are really well done, and as you can see, you can have the swag of your nation, and the colors really do match with that nation as well. They're made of metal, so they're very solid too, so you don't have to worry about like some other card bending, but it just has that nice metallic look. Also, they do nation cards too, so if you want to rep your nation, you're more than welcome to. I'm doing a giveaway too through Gleam.io. Typical you expect with entries, do little actions, check out their website, etc. The winner will get a $30 coupon essentially to be able to place on their next order. And it's a great way to combine orders with multiple friends, especially if you guys want to get energy counters together to save a little bit of money as well on shipping. If you want to check out their store, I'll put it in the links in the description as well. And also use Commander Jaime as a coupon code for a flat 15% off on any order as well. They just want to support other content creators and serve Vanguard as a community as well. Thank you again, amigo. Onto the deck profile. So starting with the grade 3s, we're playing a 2-2 split of the original Raging form with the V series. It's the original Raging form that you need to be able to do the superior strike with Raging Rapt and get the Crest. And typically it's used for that. And then later on, you can also use the typical Raging form skill. And since it rides any Raging form technically, you can go into the V1, which lets you keep going but generate more force markers, which is what you want. Secondly, this also has the Counterblast skill when you have 4 more damage to call grade 2 or less, and you could further extend to continue your turn or deal with a little bit of disruptive plays as well. There have been lists that have been testing out 1-to-3 ratios depending on which one you value more, and also the 2-to-2 split, so feel free to play around with that too. Now you may be asking yourself, like, how do we ride the original Raging form very consistently? And it's because of this grade 3 called Slay Hacks. So Slay Hacks on ride essentially Counterblast, discard 1, search for a Raging form and ride it as Vanguard, and then this can bounce to your hand back. So as you can see, that's why you're able to play like a split ratio and still have a consistent ride target. And in essence, you have 5 original Raging forms in this deck build to rely on. But I wanted to do the 2-2 split so I wasn't too heavily invested into Slay Hacks every single game. It is a Counterblast, and it's easy for an opponent to keep you at 0 or just give you 1 Counterblast, and now you have to dictate versus using this over our Dark Blast, for example. So definitely play around with the ratios to your liking. 1 copy of Raging Fall. So this card is basically our backup Revenger. If we're able to play like a 5th Raging form, then I would do so. But it does have some utility outside of just Raging form. It's a Restander. You can do this with the Chainranker Stride to gain the ability of the hearts, and you become a solid Restander. And if you do this, especially once you're GB3 live, essentially, you have the guard restriction through Chainranker to make it even harder for your opponent. This also can come up where you essentially lock your back row to prevent some disruptive plays or even against the Link Joker matchup, and make your costs CB free, essentially. Or if your opponent kept you with no damage face up, that's another alternative to do as well. This could be set up too later on when you do a Raging form with the V series to ride this as the last rideable target, essentially, from the prior turn. Another card that's been very helpful with this deck is Bracing Angel Ladder. So this card basically gives you resist entirely for your rear guards. Not only that, your entire Vanguard turn has an additional 5k for each of your Vanguard attacks. So if you think about with Raging Rapt's numbers, if you put a force marker on the Vanguard circle, you're already 38, doing triple drive, then twin drive, and so on. But this gives you another 5k buff to make you 43 each attack as well. This card also lets you put this into Soul, but also draw a card. So it's almost like an upstart Goblin in a sense, to get your combo piece potentially anyway, but also feel for the soul. One of the things I noticed with this deck is that because you're not rewriting technically on Raging Rapt turns, your soul is constant during that turn. So you only have the cards that you rode with essentially. And if you're trying to use cards like Renault and Rakia, you have to find that balance in case you need to do the original cost for Raging Rapt to extend another attack as well. So this just helps with the soul as well. So it's not totally useless against like non-disruptive matchups. This actually can just make your turn a little bit better and consistent overall. This is also great against the Shurinary matchup too, just to help basically a turn or two just to be like, I'm going to do my thing. And then if I still have leftover Riggards or if they call from the drop zone, I'm still good. I'm playing 3 copies of the grade 3 heal. So 1 unique grade 3 is 2 Stride. 2, it's an Abyss Dragon, which can come up with the original cost. This also lets you survive early game in case you're fighting against another Raging Rapt, essentially, or any other early aggressive decks that can really push for damage. But typically, if you go to 4th damage, it's not the end of the world because you can capitalize it with the Raging Form V series. But if you're going to rely still on Raging Rapt, you still want to use this defensively just in case. 4 copies of mana. So this card is an absolute must. This is a free caller to call another grade 1 that you can use for utility purposes to make your turn make or break. This works being called anywhere, so including drops such as like skills from Rakia, or even call from the deck with Raging Form V series as well, to further extend and being able to continue Raging Form throughout that turn as well. This is also a decent right target because you can call a card like Renault and have the on-hit pressure with a 16k column essentially. So now it gets your opponent to think like, do I really want to guard this or take this? And either way, they lose a card or you gain a card essentially. 4 copies of Dark Bless. This is also a necessity because with Raging Form, you need to retire a total of 6 Revengers throughout that turn to be able to do the skill twice. So you have 3 Vanguard attacks. Essentially, where is that 6 Rigard coming from during that battle phase? And that's where Revenger Dark Bless Angel comes into place. Again, we only have 5 Rigard circles, so this will call during the battle phase, which helps with that. This can also extend to other cards too that could call more cards too, or search for other copies of Raging Form, such as like Mar, for example, too. This is also a great target to call if you wrote it with your grade 2 turn, using Rakia as well. And then you can just use the other column with a mana to build that column and then fill behind the Vanguard with anything you need. Demon World Castle Vangebees, 4 copies of this card, and I do want to slow down a little bit with this card too. Some people, and myself included at first, were a little bit hesitant to play this card. 1, it's not a Revenger. 2, it's relying on GB1. But if we're going to do Raging Rapt anyway, we're going to be GB2 technically, actually. So this card is immediately live on a turn 3, which helps speed this up. So what does it actually do is that when it's placed, you can choose another Rigard, and essentially it will count as 2 for the cost of a retirement skill. So now you can target one of your Revengers, and it actually counts as 2. This is super helpful because now you don't have to rely on Dark Blast to consistently do 3 Vanguard attacks, but you could also use this now to further extend to get into easily a 4th Vanguard attack, which I'll mention in the combo and show that out how you can play that out as well. But overall, this is kind of like a backup to Dark Blast. So if you don't have it, or if you don't have a face-up damage, you can still use this card to get you through 3 Vanguard attacks still. You could actually write this as well, and a card like Rakia will still work because it actually counts the grade 3 writing as a Revenger, so it doesn't necessarily care for the grade 2 ride target at that point, which is actually really nice and flexible at that point. The one thing that is annoying is that it's not a Rakia target, so if that's the only grade 2 that you have during that turn, it kind of sucks, but outside of that, it's pretty much useful in every case. This can also work with your other fallback strides such as Morfessa, your Restanders, making those turns a lot easier to commit some Riggards without having to commit too much at that point too. So I really feel that this card is actually adding value to what the deck wants to do in that point. I've considered cards like Tartu, and I've played with that too. The thing with Tartu in this build is that it uses Soul, but it also has to be called from hand, so it's very limited. And at the same time, you don't want to use the Soul resource on a Raging Rapt turn because you're already limited at that point if you pair it off with Rakia, Renault, and also the original cost for Raging Rapt as well. So then having this card as a backup instead of Tartu, I felt like this was an easier transition to do. On to the grade 1s for Renault. So this card is phenomenal. It's on hit or on boosted on hit. You can check the top 3 for Revenger and then bottom deck the rest. This helps search your combo pieces that you need. Your Slay Hacks, your original Raging Forms, your Dark Blesses, your Manas. You have the Revenger Heal too, or the Revenger PG if you do play that as well. And then when it's retired, you can Soul Blast and your opponent chooses one of the Riggards and retires it. So this helps wanting to be retired, but also dwindling the opponent's resources at the same time. 4 copies of Rakia. This is also a phenomenal card. This is ideally your ride target for grade 1. And so that way, once you get to grade 3, you're able to call grade 1 as rested. This essentially just gives you a body on that turn 3 when you actually do need it. That grade 1 can be flexible. It could be another copy of Rakia, Or it can be like Mar, Trumpeter, all these options that you can play and really set up that turn properly if you need to be. Again, the rearguard skill is their Soul Blast 2 and Superior Call a Revenger grade 2. As you realize, most of the deck calls grade 1s, but essentially with this, you're able to get to your grade 2s from your drop zone and reuse some cards. And it's not the end of the world that if you rode like a Dark Bless or a Mana, and now you feel like you're playing with one less version of that card, but this helps you get what you need just in case as well. One copy of Mars, so this lets you search a copy of your Vanguard. So any Raging form, technically, you can search. So if you're in the original, you can still search for the V series, which is actually pretty cool. And then later on, you can have that resource to go into a normal Raging form follow-up turn. Do keep in mind that the Counterblast is requirement of a Revenger too, so we do play a good amount of generic cards now, but it's the only card in the deck that actually cares about the name when it comes to the damage zone. A card that I really have been enjoying to play again is Trumpeter as a grade 1. So all it does is that when it's called, you can Counterblast 1 and call grade 0 Revenger and call it as Rust. So the only grade 0s that we have in deck to rely on consistently are the crits and the heal that I do play. The reason that you would even call those cards is really during the battle phase. If you have a Raging Form V, or essentially can call Mana, and then call this, and then call the grade 0, and now you have 3 bodies to work with to do another Raging Form skill. Also, I'll show off in the combo that this card in tandem with Dark Blast and also DWC, which is Demon War Castle, you can get to the 4th Raging Rapt attack while your opponent's still a grade 2 as well. One copy of the Revenger PG, as I mentioned. This is super useful because Renault can search it, add to the defensive quality, but also it's a grade 1, so you can recycle it with the G-Guard Griever Dragon. And then not only that you're PGing with the G-Guard, but this can be used in the future turn once you draw into it or your drove check into it, so you can recycle PGs in general. Also, Elementaria Sanctitude, this card is a Blitz order that lets us, perfect guard with 1 card. Conserving hand is important with this deck, and it's also just more prevalent since pretty much everything can stride if they go first. So they're always going to be with triple drive, and this can be helping you survive those matchups. This also gets around certain guard restrictions against the Mare, but also like Dimension Police, Grand Blue with Bartholomew, for example, and etc. So it's just an important card still to play. Onto the zeros. So I'm playing Full Bow, the best doggle. You can play any starter that you want as long as it's a V series. If you play like the Legion, like the Abyss Dragon, you may want to consider a Revenger grade 0 because you could technically return that to the deck and then that can become something like with a Revenger name is important. So it's totally up to you. Or Stride crit. So, it's just as important to be able to stride moving on and keep those grade 3s in your hand because you're rewriting them or you're going to use for G-Guarding or also the order such as Bracing Angel Ladder. So it just helps with the consistency of striding. 3 more crits on top of with the Cleric crits essentially. What's nice about this is that you're able to take out some of the draws that you have and use this, like if it's damage check, it acts like a draw too, while still maintaining the crit pressure. As you keep playing this deck, you're going to realize that you do value the crit pressure. 2 30k Sentinels, so I'm playing the Belial Owls. And again, you want to keep the crit pressure, so instead of the PG draws, I went to the 30k Sentinels. Again, you have a G-Guard that acts as a PG, and you have a grade 1 Revenger that can be recycled with that one as well. 2 more crits in the form of Revenger crits. Like I mentioned, Trumpeter needs the Revenger name too, but also there are some times where you may have to call like a trigger like this to be able to make the body count to retire as well. Worst case scenario, but it does help in that regard too. The last crit, quote unquote, is the blue OT. So the reason that I want to play this over the Keter one is synergized as well. It's more crit pressure. It also grabs a card from the drop zone. So if you need another copy of Raging, this can help you get another copy that way, or even extend to the 4th attack if needed, or just any cards in general at that point. The Keter Sanctuary over trigger is kind of weird because like your riggers will get drive checks, but typically they're the grade 2s or the grade 1s. Your grade 3s are typically going to be preserved hand or writing, so you're not really going to benefit much from that. And if you're not expecting that, you could deck out in the late game as well. But it also doesn't have any crit pressure too, so then it's just like, that could have been a defining moment. I've seen it where basically like I'm 1 damage short essentially to seal the deal with Raging Form. And blue ulti helps a lot with that. The last heal is the Revenger heal. As we mentioned, we're playing 3 of the grade 3 heals. This is the 4th heal, and it's the Revenger name. You can search it with Renault, for example. You can grab this with Trumpeter if need to be to make bodies count. But also when you G-Guard with this, you can bind this in another heal to be able to countercharge or soul charge. 9 times out of 10, you're going to countercharge because that counterblast is such a valuable resource in this deck. It's really our only way to countercharge in this entire deck. Everything else you kind of have to moderate or hopefully that it's free in some form or fashion. And also if you're using like a Griever Dragon, that costs a counterblast too. So if you pair this up, it makes it free in a sense at that point. So it's very helpful in that sense. Also, real quick plug. Again, I offer one-on-one coaching through Metafy too. So if you need help with this deck or even prepare for future tournaments coming up soon, happy to help out where I can. I do all the formats as well. Check out the testimonials and feel free to ask any questions too. Happy to help out where I can as well. Onto the strides. We're playing one copy of Harmonics. You need to have the ticket shield. This is also a generic flip for later on, usually Chain Ranker. You could also use the Link against the Link Joker matchup to unlock stuff if that comes up too, so there's some flexibility there. A copy of an extra Revenger, you need to do this with the Crest effect to be able to get the force markers and such, so you might as well flip this. I've actually considered just playing a playset of Rapt and then flipping one of the Rapts that way, because I'm like, oh, I'm never going to go into the fourth attack. But as you play tested, and depending on the cards you have in your list, you realize it actually comes up more often than you think. So that's why I was like, oh, maybe you need an extra Revenger just in case that comes up. 4 copies of the Raging Rapt. I only have 3 on hand and I did not want to print a proxy. I'll just wait for the deck set at that point once things are legal. But essentially, you definitely will go into 3 of them and the 4th one will come up eventually as well, depending on the games. Such a phenomenal card. And I'll show off in the combo too what it looks like too. 2 Chain Ranker, so you want to have some flexibility just in case you need to fall back. This essentially can turn into a Raging form that first attack as a stride attack. Also, you will have GB3 live, so you can have some guard restriction with the first like 2 attacks essentially. After that, you'll be retiring reguard, so you could potentially like basically disable it. And plus, if you're rewriting a Raging form, then you'll be on a new Vanguard technically, which this goes away. This is also a great card to be able to take advantage of restanders such as like Raging Fall and also Phantom Blast or Bliss if you do play it as well. So this card is really dependent on the heart that you have. And I just played 2 just in case I need to go into the second one, but for sure 1 is definitely mandatory. Another phenomenal card is Morfessa. I played 2 copies too, just in case like you're in a weird situation where you can't necessarily rely on Chain Ranker or follow out with any more like Raging forms. This is something that you could just stride into, and as long as you have the ritual count, your attacks are going to be critical plus 15, and then also that additional like, hey, you need to call 2 cards from hand in each attack pressure. This is also a card that I've also considered like the V promo for Shadow Paladin, especially since it came out recently, just to get to the 4th attack to help with that. But I feel like with that, now you're trying to commit to that versus like where the deck really wants to do Raging form. And unfortunately, that doesn't have a Revenger name too, which kind of sucks. But, you know, you can still play it out and see what you like as well. 2 generic restanders, so we have the Crow and we also have the Spectral Blaster Diablo. Crow is essentially where if basically they couldn't retire 3, then you have the restanding skill gained. It also gets power, it keeps the drive checks, which is phenomenal, right? It's basically the best case generic restander that we have. Spectral Blaster Diablo is that essentially, especially against Excel decks, you may not be able to basically get the skill from Crow, so if you need to fall back, this is a backup essentially. This also card with the Demon World Castle card, the DWC, can make this a less costly thing as well. So the synergy actually is pretty well with the generic Shadow Paladin retirement aspect. 2 Griever Dragon G-Guards. This is a phenomenal G-Guard, and Shadow Paladin is blessed to have this card. 1, you recycle your grade 1s as many as you want, up to 5. And if you do up to 5, then you have the option of Counterblast 1 and become a perfect guard, which is insane. Also, this has the flexibility of guarding 2 units at the same time. So essentially, if you, let's say you G-Guarded with the rear guard or something, and if you do the 5 grade 1s back to deck, you can Counterblast to perfect guard your Vanguard. And so you're protecting 2 units as well. It doesn't come up as often, but I thought I mentioned it too. So this card has a lot of value, and that's why I recommend 2. The first time, sometimes you may just recycle stuff just to recycle stuff. And then the second one's like, hey, I'm going to return 5 so I can actually perfect guard. 1 Plot Maker, because it's a free Ritual 3 card. Essentially 25k shield that you can rely on pretty easily without using any resources. 1 Dark Veil Dragon, it does use a Soul Blast 1, but then it counts 5k, it gains 5k shield for every 2 grade 1s in your drop zone. So it's another way to get big shield without having to use one of the other G-Guards, depending on your situation. Also, depending on the follow-up turn, especially if I'm going into Morfessa, I generally want to count my drop zone if I have enough triggers and also grade 1s. And if there's still 1 grade 1 left in my soul, I can Soul Blast this out during my opponent's turn to help set that up better and easily too. An example Raging Form turn, you want to use cards to build up a field, and then you can call more rear guards to solidify your field. Use this one on either of these to count as 2. Stride into Raging Rapt and generate the 2 force markers. 1 on Rearguard Circle, 1 on Vanguard Circle. 19, 38, triple drive, all triggers onto this guy, and crits on the Vanguard, if any. Retire 3, this counts as 2, so then these 2 only. Stride into Raging Rapt, Dark Blast skill, count last 1, call it here. Poke for 18, has on hit pressure as well. Boosted attack, also on hit pressure, Twin drive this time. Scale retire 3 Revengers, these 3. Stride it to the other Raging Rapt. Attack again. Twin drive. And then finally, the last attack. An example for 4 Raging Rapt attacks. You want 3 Counter Blasts. Similar setup to this. 19. You could do Vanguard boosted if you want this time. Triple drive. Any triggers onto this guy still. Retire the 3. Stride onto Raging Rapt again. Dark Bless. Call Trumpeter. Trumpeter skill. Counter Blast 1. Call another Revenger grade 0. This can poke. Attack. Twin drive. Again, any triggers here. Scale. Retire 3 Revengers. These 3. Stride into Raging Rapt again. This time you want to attack with this column. Then Raging Rapt. Twin drive again. Crits. The original cost skill. Counter Blast 1. Soul Blast 1. Retire 2. Any rear guards. Discard 2. Grade 3 Abyss. Stride into the last Raging Rapt. And attack. Twin drive again. And that's the deck profile, amigos. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot of things that you can tinker with and try to your preference. I have a how to upgrade video, which a lot of the essence of that video has in this as well, but you can try multiple options too. So feel free to share ideas in the comments below too, and even some experiences or tech ideas that you want to share. This deck will definitely be considered metagame changing in the future too once it comes out. So definitely be on the lookout for this deck as well. I know I did a recent matchup with Will, which I'll be publishing soon, that essentially we even discussed at the end of it that Rollock might even see some reoccurrence just in general as well, just to be able to survive that turn better, outside of just having Honolys. I've been enjoying myself with the new support, and I'm excited to get the premium deck set and do a box opening as well once we get that in the summer. And if you want to support the channel, use the affiliate links such as like 50 Card Shop, Trading Card Mint, TCG Player, etc. But also check out Dueling Guard's phenomenal anime swag products such as playmats, binders, sleeves, and deck boxes as well. On to the next one, amigos.